December 3rd, 2007, Morning Ridge, Alabama. Sheriff Daniel Merritt, 40 years old and known for his dedication and steady hand, was respected by all. But even the strongest reputations could be shattered by the most hidden of secrets. Elena Ruiz, a college student home for the holidays, had been out for her morning jog when she stumbled upon the lifeless body of Noor Rahimi, a 19-year-old girl who worked at her family's cafe on Main Street. Noor's dark hair was spread like a fan over the damp, frosty ground. Her eyes, usually full of warmth and curiosity, stared blankly at the sky. The stillness of her figure was unnatural, too serene. But the bruising on her neck and wrists told a different story. Sheriff Merritt arrived on the scene within minutes, his heart thundering in his chest. He had to force himself to stay calm, to appear collected. As he pushed through the small gathering crowd, he locked eyes with Noor's mother, Layla Rahimi, whose face was pale with shock and grief. "I need everyone to step back," Merritt said, his voice firm but cracking slightly at the edges. The words felt hollow in his mouth. His thoughts raced with the knowledge of what this would mean, not just for the Rahimi family, but for him. Noor had been bright, driven, and kind-hearted. She was known for her infectious laugh and her love for stories, both reading them and weaving her own. She was the daughter of one of the few immigrant families in Morning Ridge, but they were respected and well-liked. The discovery of her body was a blow that rippled through the close-knit town, leaving everyone wondering who could have harmed someone so beloved. Sheriff Merritt glanced over his shoulder at his deputy, Tom Graves, who looked pale and stunned. "Get forensics here and lock down the scene," Merritt instructed, his voice rough. Tom nodded, fumbling for his radio. As he surveyed the scene, a cold realization gripped Merritt. He recognized the scarf partially buried under Noor's arm. It was his, given to her in moments he thought would remain forever secret. A wave of nausea swept over him as he realized the storm that was about to hit. The Rahimi family cafe, the Lantern, was a hub of warmth and community, and that afternoon it sat closed, a sign on the door reading, "Closed for family emergency." The townspeople whispered outside, speculating and swapping theories. But the whispers turned from sadness to suspicion when Sheriff Merritt himself became a focal point of those rumors. Noor's friends painted a picture of a young woman who had been torn between the traditions of her family and her dreams for herself. Those close to her whispered that she had confided in them about a relationship, one that she said could ruin both their lives if discovered. She never said his name, but her expression spoke volumes when asked if it was someone powerful. That night, Sheriff Merritt sat in his office, his hands shaking as he read through the initial reports. The bruises on Noor's wrists suggested she had fought her assailant. The bruises on her neck showed how her life had been taken. But the scene was too clean, too deliberate. Whoever had done this hadn't left in a hurry. There was a soft knock on the door, and Tom Graves stepped in. "Sheriff, we need to talk," he said, eyes flickering nervously. Merritt looked up, trying to mask his fear. "What is it, Tom?" "I found something near the creek," Tom said, holding up a small pendant on a silver chain. Merritt's blood ran cold when he recognized it. It had been Noor's. He'd seen her wear it many times, often when they met in the cover of night, far from the prying eyes of Morning Ridge. "I need you to run it through evidence," Merritt said, his voice barely steady. Tom hesitated. "Daniel, people are starting to ask questions. They know she had someone. They know whoever it was. She cared about him. Are you sure we're looking in the right places?" Merritt clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to snap. "Do your job, Tom, and keep this between us until we know more." As Tom left, the walls of the small office seemed to close in on Merritt. The room smelled faintly of coffee and old paper, but to him it reeked of fear. He knew that if anyone found out about his connection to Noor, It wouldn't just be his career that crumbled. His family, his place in the town, everything would be gone. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially in a town as tightly wound as Morning Ridge. And with the town on edge, it was only a matter of time before someone uncovered the truth that tied their trusted sheriff to a tragic, deadly affair. The next day, the cold grip of winter tightened around Morning Ridge, adding an air of somberness to the town already shrouded in grief. Sheriff Merritt drove slowly down Main Street, the familiar route now feeling foreign and hostile. His mind raced with plans, excuses, anything that might protect him from the storm he knew was coming. By the time he arrived at the sheriff's office, a crowd had gathered outside, their faces drawn with worry and curiosity. Whispers floated in the frigid air as people speculated about the investigation. Merritt stepped inside, nodding stiffly at the deputies who were avoiding his gaze. Tom Graves sat at his desk, eyes glued to the forensic report in front of him. "Tom, what did you find?" Merritt asked, forcing a steady voice. Tom looked up, eyes dark with concern. "The autopsy report came in this morning. Cause of death was asphyxiation. The bruising suggests she struggled hard." Merritt's heart pounded in his chest. He nodded slowly, his throat tightening. "Anything else?" Tom hesitated, glancing over his shoulder to ensure they were alone. There were fibers found on her clothes, not from the creek or anything in the area. They matched synthetic fabric, like from a uniform or work jacket. A cold shiver raced down Merritt's spine. "Like ours?" His voice was barely more than a whisper. Tom nodded. "Could be, but we don't have enough yet. We need to figure out who she was involved with. Her friends said she was hiding something, someone." The silence that followed was deafening. Merritt's mind raced with the memory of Noor's laughter, her eyes sparkling as they spoke about their dreams. He felt trapped, every detail tightening around him like a noose. The Rahimi family home was dark, the curtains drawn tightly shut. Inside, Layla Rahimi sat on the edge of Noor's bed, clutching her daughter's favorite book. The grief in the room was suffocating, but there was something more. A determination that glimmered in Layla's eyes. She had heard whispers around town, people talking about Noor's mysterious relationship. "Who were you seeing, my child?" she murmured, her voice breaking. In the kitchen, Imran Rahimi spoke quietly with their eldest son, Samir. "The sheriff says they're working on it, but they don't seem to know anything yet," Imran said, frustration lacing his words. Samir's jaw tightened. "Then we find out ourselves. Noor deserves justice, father." At the sheriff's office, Tom Graves couldn't shake his own growing unease. He had known Merritt for years and had always admired him. But now, something felt wrong. The sheriff's demeanor, the way his hands trembled when he thought no one was looking, it all pointed to something deeper. Tom flipped through his notes, reviewing every detail of the case, and his eyes stopped on a scribbled line. Pendant, initials, DM. Tom's brow furrowed. He remembered the pendant he found near the creek with the small, ornate initials. His blood ran cold as he realized what it meant. DM Daniel Merritt. His eyes darted to the sheriff's closed office door. He stood up, heart pounding, and pushed the door open. Merritt looked up, eyes hollow. "What is it, Tom?" Tom swallowed, holding up the evidence bag with the pendant inside. "I need an explanation, Daniel. I know what this is." The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. Merritt's eyes flicked to the pendant and then back to Tom. The silence between them was electric, heavy with unspoken truths. "It's not what you think," Merritt said, his voice cracking. "But yes, it's mine. Noor and I, we were involved." Tom stepped back as if struck. "You were involved? Was a teenager, Daniel. Do you know what you've done?" His voice rose, eyes wide with disbelief and anger. "I know," Merritt snapped, guilt and fear spilling over. "I know what I've done, but I didn't kill her. I loved her, Tom. I would never—" "Then who did?" Tom cut him off, eyes hard. "Because right now, you're the only suspect I have." A knock at the office door interrupted them, and both men stiffened as Deputy Carla Miller entered. "Sheriff Tom, you need to see this." Someone dropped off an anonymous letter at the front desk. Tom snatched the letter, eyes scanning its hastily written words. She knew too much. She couldn't keep quiet. Merritt's blood ran cold as he read over Tom's shoulder. The letter was unsigned, but it was a warning, a threat from someone who knew exactly what Noor had discovered and why she had to die. Tom's eyes met Merritt's, suspicion replaced by dawning horror. There was someone else out there, and they had just sent their first message. The clock in the hallway chimed, echoing in the tense silence. The town of Morning Ridge, once so sure of its peace, was now on the brink of uncovering the darkest secrets it had ever known. The letter changed everything. Tom Graves stood in the center of the sheriff's office, eyes locked on the jagged handwriting scrawled across the page. Sheriff Merritt's confession had stunned him, but the anonymous note hinted at a deeper conspiracy, one that threatened to upend everything they thought they knew about Noor's death. Tom turned to Merritt, whose face was pale and drawn. "If someone else knew, we need to find out who." "And vast," Tom said, trying to suppress the anger and disbelief still roiling inside him. Merritt nodded numbly. "We have to be careful, Tom. If this gets out—" "It's already out," Tom interrupted, voice hard. "The whole town's talking, Daniel. And if you're lying about anything else, now's the time to come clean." Merritt's jaw tightened. "I told you everything, but we need to figure out who sent that letter." Later that night, Tom sat in his small, dimly lit kitchen, his thoughts racing. The pendant with the initials, the anonymous letter, and Merritt's confession all circled his mind like vultures. He reached for the phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Detective Willis," came the familiar voice on the other end. "It's Tom Graves from Morning Ridge," Tom said, keeping his voice low. "I need your help. It's about the death of Noor Rahimi. There's more to it than we thought." Detective Willis was from a neighboring county and known for his relentless pursuit of justice. The two had worked together on a few cross-county cases, and Tom trusted him more than anyone in the current storm. "Tell me everything," Willis said. The next morning, the Rahimi family gathered for morning prayers, their grief weighing heavily in the quiet room. Layla glanced at her husband, Imran, whose eyes were hollow, darkened by sleepless nights. Samir sat with clenched fists, fury simmering just beneath the surface. "We need answers, Father," Samir said once the silence stretched too thin. "The sheriff isn't telling us everything." Imran sighed deeply, the lines on his face deepening. "We will get justice for Noor, but we must be careful. This town isn't kind to those who challenge its heroes." Samir's eyes blazed. "I don't care about their heroes. Noor deserves better." Detective Willis arrived in Morning Ridge just as the sun began its slow climb into a slate-grey sky. He met Tom in the station, eyes sharp and searching. "Show me what you've got," Willis said without preamble. Tom handed him the letter, the autopsy report, and photos of the crime scene. Willis's eyes narrowed as he read the note. "Whoever sent this was close enough to know she couldn't stay silent," Willis said, glancing up at Tom. "The question is, what did Noor know that put her in danger?" Tom swallowed hard. "Merritt said they were involved. It's a scandal, sure, but not enough to drive someone to murder. There has to be more." Just then, Carla Miller knocked on the office door, her expression tense. "Tom, detective, there's someone here you need to speak to. It's Samir Rahimi." Samir stepped into the room, his shoulders squared, eyes blazing with determination. "I know Sheriff Merritt was involved with my sister," he began, the edge in his voice slicing through the silence. "But there's more you need to know." Tom exchanged a glance with Willis. "What is it, Samir?" "Noor found something at the cafe. It was a ledger hidden in the storeroom. Names, dates, and amounts. Money that shouldn't have been there," Samir said, his jaw tightening. "She thought it was linked to some kind of scheme, maybe tied to the sheriff or someone in town." Willis leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Did she tell you who she thought was behind it?" Samir shook his head. "No, but she said someone powerful. She was scared." The tension thickened as Tom and Willis made their way to the Lantern, the Rahimi family cafe. The place was quiet, darkened by grief and shuttered since Noor's death. Imran met them at the door, wordlessly leading them to the storeroom. "Everything in here is as it was," Imran said quietly, glancing at the untouched shelves and boxes. Tom's eyes landed on a corner shelf with a small gap between the wooden slats. Reaching inside, he felt the edge of a book and pulled out an old leather-bound ledger. Willis flipped through the pages, the markings telling a story of bribes and payoffs. Names they recognized, townspeople, officials, and even law enforcement appeared in the pages. And one name stood out: Sheriff Daniel Merritt. Tom's heart dropped as he turned to Willis, whose eyes had darkened with realization. "This goes deeper than an affair," Willis said. "This is about power, corruption, and covering up a trail that Noor stumbled onto." The door to the storeroom creaked, and a shadow moved just outside. Tom's hand instinctively went to his sidearm as he stepped out, but the hallway was empty, save for the chill that seemed to seep through the walls. Somewhere in the quiet of Morning Ridge, someone was watching, knowing their secrets were beginning to unravel, and they were prepared to do whatever it took to keep them buried. The discovery of the ledger sent shockwaves through the investigation, propelling it toward a dangerous and inevitable conclusion. Sheriff Merritt's name listed among the payments was damning, but it was the network of other names that hinted at something even larger, a web of corruption extending through Morning Ridge. Detective Willis and Tom sat in the dimly lit station, the ledger between them. "This isn't just about Merritt," Willis said, his voice low. "There's a system here, one that Noor stumbled upon." Tom's stomach churned. Noor's death was no longer just a tragic consequence of an affair. It was a calculated act meant to silence her. "We need to confront Merritt," Tom said, his voice resolute. "But if this runs deeper, we need to be careful." Willis nodded. "He won't go down without a fight, and if he's just one part of this, others will act to protect themselves." The following morning, Merritt sat at his desk, eyes bloodshot and weary. The walls of his office seemed to close in, every creak and whisper of the station a reminder that time was running out. His heart thudded when he saw Tom and Willis approach, their expressions cold and unyielding. "Daniel," Tom began, his voice heavy with betrayal, "we found a ledger. Your name is in it, along with payments and transactions. It's linked to people across this town. What did Noor find?" Merritt's face paled. He stood slowly, a mixture of exhaustion and defiance. "I don't know what you think you found, but you're making a mistake. Don't lie to us, Merritt," Willis said sharply, stepping forward. "We know Noor discovered it, and we know someone killed her to keep it secret." For a moment, silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Then Merritt's shoulders sagged. "It was never supposed to go this far," he muttered. "Yes, I took money, bribes from businesses, deals made under the table. But Noor didn't know it was me. She thought it was just the cafe's landlord, Tom's breath caught. Who's the landlord, Daniel?" Merritt's eyes darted nervously toward the window. "Benjamin Keene," he said, the name landing like a stone. Keene was one of the wealthiest men in Morning Ridge, known for his influence and connections that stretched far beyond the town's borders. Later that afternoon, Tom and Willis made their way to Keene's sprawling estate at the edge of town. The manicured lawn and imposing brick mansion were out of place amid the modest homes of Morning Ridge, a testament to the power Keene wielded. Keene answered the door himself, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 60s with silver hair and a cold, calculating gaze. "Sheriff, detective, to what do I owe this surprise?" Willis didn't mince words. "We found a ledger linking you to bribes and corruption across this town. Noor Rahimi knew about it, didn't she?" A flicker of recognition crossed Keene's face before he schooled his expression into one of mild amusement. "I'm not sure where you're getting your information, but it sounds like nonsense." "It's not," Tom said, stepping forward. "We know she found evidence, and we know she died because of it." Keene's lips thinned. "I suggest you both leave before you say something you'll regret." Just as Tom opened his mouth to respond, the sudden sound of tires screeching outside caught their attention. A black sedan roared up the driveway, and a figure stepped out, a man in a dark suit, holding a gun. "Get down!" Willis shouted, drawing his weapon as shots rang out. Chaos erupted, shouts and gunfire blending in a deafening symphony. Tom and Willis dove behind a stone pillar as the gunman fired again, the bullets ricocheting off the brick facade. Keene took cover inside, slamming the door shut. The gunman turned, his eyes wild, before jumping back into the sedan and speeding off, leaving behind a trail of tire marks and broken silence. Breathing hard, Tom stood up, adrenaline surging through him. "He was trying to silence us." Willis nodded grimly. "And we just confirmed everything we needed to know. Keene's behind this, but he's not working alone." That evening, back at the station, Merritt sat in the interrogation room, hands cuffed in front of him. He looked up as Tom entered, eyes hollow with the weight of resignation. "Keene's not going to protect you," Tom said. "He's sending people to silence anyone who gets too close. But if you help us, you might save what little you have left." Merritt's gaze shifted, a flash of something like regret passing over his face. "I never wanted any of this," he whispered. "I'll tell you everything I know." Over the next hour, Merritt detailed the corruption scheme that had funded Keene's ventures and lined the pockets of those willing to play along. Noor had discovered more than just a crooked landlord. She had stumbled into a conspiracy that stretched across the town's pillars of power. When she threatened to expose it, Keene had ordered her silence. Merritt's voice trembled as he recounted the final night he saw Noor. "I begged her to leave it alone, to stay safe, but she wouldn't. She was too brave for her own good." Within days, Benjamin Keene was arrested, the case shaking Morning Ridge to its core. The wealthy elite who had once turned a blind eye to his dealings found themselves questioned and scrutinized. Merritt's confession secured his conviction, though his testimony spared him the heaviest sentence. For the Rahimi family, justice was bittersweet. Noor's courage had exposed the rot hidden in the town, but it could never bring her back. The cafe, once a place of warmth and laughter, stood as a quiet reminder of the cost of speaking truth to power. Morning Ridge was forever changed, the shadows cast by its secrets now illuminated for all to see.